Welcome to Outliers Part 2, redefining the way that we coach soccer. My name is Marcus DiBernardo, and I'm going to take you down another path and tell you another story about player development. And hopefully at the end of this video, it will give you a few more rabbit holes to go down in your own research, and it may even end up being impactful to you, to the way that you currently coach. It may provide you with some ideas, some inspiration to make a few tweaks, make a few changes, and it might change the perception, the perspective that you look at coaching currently as. So let me start off with the story. It's a couple years ago. I was contacted by an MLS team who invited me in to take a tour of the facilities and to watch some training sessions, to sit down with the coaches, and even had a chance to sit down with the owner of the club. So as soon as I get there, I sat down with the owner, which was a really nice thing. It was something that was cool. I wasn't expecting, right? And he started to talk about their game model. And it was a high pressing type of, Red Bull type of game model. And one of the big GMs at the time, who was really well known in soccer, brought this game model to the club. And the owner asked me, he said, "Hey, what do you think of this game model? What do you think of the way that we're doing it?" And I said, "You have to be very careful. I'm actually not a big believer in all in the game model. And I think it can be detrimental for your youth teams to play in that way. And I personally don't even believe in it for your first team." And obviously that conversation wasn't received so well. The way that we normally go about coaching sessions is this. The coach takes out his tactic board and says, "This is what we didn't do so well last game. This is how we're going to fix it. Here's the problem. Here's the solution. I have the answer for you," right? And that's normally the coach as the commander, right? And here's the solutions. The players can have hundreds and thousands of solutions, but the game model is influencing them so heavily, they're not getting a chance to explore solutions because the game model is doing it for them, because the coach is like the almighty who has the solutions already in the game model, and all the players are is really pawns in this process. It's not the coach saying, "Here is the problem from the game, and we're going to go over the solution." It is the coach. The coach could say, "Hey, this is what I saw in the game. You guys practice the solutions as they emerge." And I almost want to equate like the coach as the conductor, right? The coach is the one who's the conductor. He or she is the one of the knowledge base with the solutions. They're going to organize the training session. They're going to organize the tactics. They're going to organize how we play on the field. And it leaves very little for the players, right? But it's typically the way that we were all coached and that everybody was told, analyze what happened last game and fix it, as the coach is the knowledge base. Now, my viewpoints are radically different from what we just went over in this story. So for me, the environment has all the information, and the environment is information rich with invitations for action come and go. They're constantly opening and shutting in real time as the athlete is in a real-time feedback loop with the environment as these opportunities for action open and close. Now, every player has their own autonomy and their own skill sets. So you might have skill sets where you can run by a player and somebody else doesn't because maybe they're really slow. So everybody's ability for action is different. Everybody's knowledge base, which is essentially your experience level, is different. Now, depending on what you see, your visual perception, and we'll call this your attunement, the environment has everything that you need to make decisions in the moment. So I've been working with one of the top skill acquisition people in the world, in my opinion. Works for a really top sports team, professional team, but not in soccer, in a different sport. And I was going over with him my methodology and asking him to use academic theory, use his own expertise to help improve my theory. And I went and I was showing him a player that I had who only played beach soccer and futsal until he was 14 or 15 years old, never played 11-a-side soccer. And this kid was amazing. And I showed him some video of him absolutely um, doing very well. He was really killing these teams from the NCAA Division One. And so I show him the video, and then a little while later, about 30 minutes later, we're still talking, and he says, "Listen, Marcus, you realize the reason why those teams couldn't handle him, and is because they weren't trained the way he was trained. They didn't have the experiences, the environments that he had. So his experience in beach soccer and futsal, the environment is the same when he's on that field playing against the NCAA top teams. The environment is the same, but his invitations for action, what he's able to do, is completely different than other kids with different environments and experiences. So he's saying to me, the reason this kid can play right back and they can't press him because he just dribbled by everybody is because he wasn't brought up in a system where the coach gave the kids a game model that was so rigid, made the kids play two touch, had a game model that stopped exploration and was based on one, two, or three options. Two touch, one touch, this, that, without exploration. So when I was at one of the MLS teams, that was one of the biggest things I was trying to tell the owner of the club was, look, for your U17s and below, they are making decisions based upon your game model. They are perceiving the game based upon your rigid game model. They never have the chance to explore opportunities for action, invitations for action, because you don't let them because the game model is so specific and rigid. Never mind my comments on the first team. And I could see this in all their training sessions, by the way. So, very, very important. This is, you want, what the skill acquisition coach was saying, you want behaviors, actions to emerge organically based upon the information in the environment. And I know that might be a lot to grasp, but listen to the importance of this. You want players to pick up invitations for action. You want this to emerge organically without the coach and a rigid game model. Now, the invitations in action and what the players eventually accomplish should be tied to some simple principles of play that relate to pretty much all invasion sports. So I will give you my view really quickly on that because it's important that you understand the principles of invasion sports and letting these actions emerge, but they should emerge with these principles somewhere in mind. The first principle for me, and I know you've heard me talk about this plenty of times, is to exploit space and time when you have the ball to score a goal. If you can't score a goal, you keep the ball, and eventually invitations for action will show themselves. You can take those invitations, you can perform an action, and hopefully you can score or retain possession of the ball so you can score eventually. Now, the second principle is, can you shut down time and space when you don't have the ball so the opponent can't score, and eventually can you win it back? For me, those are the only two principles. You can argue that make sure that you have defensive balance when you're in attack, so on transition you don't get exploited. If you take a look at a soccer game analytics, and they just do it as a real-time heat map, but kind of speed it up, the teams actually look like a swarm of fish. So especially teams that high press and press all over the field, it looks like a school of fish traveling and pressing together as it goes and moves together. It's actually quite interesting to watch. So, but swarms in themselves have rules to them, right? Even though it's fish or birds or whatever it is. And the rules are quite interesting. Remain close to your neighbor, move in the same direction of your neighbor, don't ram into each other, but you do have autonomy over your own physical movement. Your own invitations for action still has autonomy. So the reason I bring that up is a swarm still has individual choices, but it's guided by principles. There's autonomy in that huge mess that you see there on the screen. It's not so unlike a soccer team. And the next part of this, I want to speak to you about how can you get actions to emerge without a rigid game model at all, and how do we put this into a methodology, and how do we put this into your everyday training exercises, which is part of your methodology. So I'm not going to go over exercise after exercise. I'm just going to simply show you one exercise and relate it to that swarm, but really what I'm doing is saying let the players, their actions emerge without the use of a coach. So here, when the red team has the ball in the far, the lower grid on the right hand side, and you can see the field is split up into 6 pieces. When the red team has the ball in that corner, the blue team can only fill 4 squares, the one with the ball, and then the 3 squares that are connected to it. They're really not squares, but the 3 areas. So 4 areas. I'm not telling the team you need to have a shape of a 3-3-2, of a 2-4-2. There's no instructions whatsoever. They just operate within the constraints, which is the rules, which is the grid of the field for this environment, right? And the coach doesn't have to be the teacher and making all these points. The coach can observe at this point. The constraints in this exercise create what we want out of a defense, right? Stay compact, stay close to each other, just like the swarm. Follow the direction of the swarm. You can also, obviously, you want to have a little defensive balance in there. So those are things that is a principle of your defensive structure, defensive balance. And I'll show you a couple things, principles that you could actually put into this. But just understand, letting behaviors emerge is not saying we're going to play a 5-1-3-1. This is your exact role and responsibility. It's giving more freedom as players operate off our general principles. And here's an idea of just some general things you could do with your defense is to say, those of you who are close to the ball, like right next to the ball, when we lose it, press from multiple angles to win it back. Those are you that are near the ball, but not so close as the people that are right around it. Cut out the passing angles of the player on the ball. For those of you who are far away from the ball, make sure that we have defensive balance to guard against long balls over the top if that happens. That's it. It's very, very simple. Now you've added maybe another layer of detail to the exercise I just showed you, and it's up to the players to let these behaviors emerge. Now I know that some people are going to say, Coach, you're crazy. You just can't let players with solutions just emerge themselves from the information they see in the environment. It's going to be chaos. Well, I think you can start with some basics. And here's an idea of basics. So you have a back four, you have two center backs, you have the keeper, the outside wing backs that really operate as wingers slash wing backs, and you have a striker. All those players are in black. That is the core foundation. Those are the anchors of your structure. The five players in pink have complete freedom, right? They are just letting the invitations for action open. They're letting their movements emerge. They're autonomous. They have a lot of freedom to interchange, to rotate, all keeping in mind the principles of play, right? And the principles of play is to exploit time and space when we have the ball so we can score goals, or to shut it down when we lose the ball. This is a short 10-second clip of my team. You can see how this player understands time and space and has really special affordances to exploit time and space.